Welcome to the Test Guild Automation Podcast, where we all get together to learn more about automation and software testing with your host, Joe Colantonio.
Hey, it's Joe, and welcome to another episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. And today we'll be talking with Patrick all about how to scale your automation using 7Facette. If you don't know, Patrick has been a passionate quality engineer since 2008 and a chief architect for test automation since 2019. So he really knows his stuff. And besides that, he also really excels at technical leadership. He's also responsible for mentoring and growing his colleagues to help them improve their automation testing skills as well. And Patrick has always made it a priority to maintain a close link to the research community to evaluate and implement innovative advances in information technology. And I think this is what he's achieved in 7Facette with a lot of different things that I've never touched before. And I'm really excited to get into it. So you don't want to miss this episode. Check it out. The Test Guild Automation Podcast is sponsored by the fantastic folks at Sauce Labs, the cloud-based test platform that helps ensure you can develop with confidence at every step from code to deployment for every framework, browser, OS, mobile device, and API. Get a free trial. Visit testguild.com/Sauce Labs and click on the exclusive sponsors section to try it for free today. Check it out. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the Guild.
Hey, Joe.
Awesome. Great to have you. You've been on my schedule for a while, so I've been really excited about this episode. Before we get into though, Patrick, is there anything I missed in your bio that you want the Guild to know more about?
No, I mean, everything was in my bio, I believe. Well, let me think about No, everything was in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things here that I'm kind of new to. So it's going to be kind of like a beginner level type of what's this? Why did you do that type of episode, I think. And the first one is 7Facette. And I know it's an open source solution, but can you tell me a little bit more about what is 7Facette?
Yeah. 7Facette is a test automation library written in Kotlin. And we implement it as a multi-platform project, so we can compile the functionality for JavaScript and Java, and we can reduce duplicate code with that. So we haven't to implement the stuff twice in two different languages. We can only implement our stuff in one language and get the compilation out of that. And that makes it very, very easy for us to use that library or the functionalities in different kind of teams and in different kind of projects again and again, because every member of a team knows the function in JavaScript and also knows the function in Java, because they should be the same. So that you call the methods and the parameters, it should be always the same. So at the end, you can decide, or your project can decide, hey, I want to take JavaScript because my devs are very good in JavaScript implementation, and can say, okay, we want to implement that in JavaScript. And if somebody switched the team, or I don't know, the project changes to a Java language, they can change to Java back and can say, okay, we can implement the same stuff in Java because we know the methods, the implementation is, it's like the same. That's the cool thing.
And is that why you use Kotlin? Why would you use Kotlin? Is to give you that ability to use different languages behind the scenes?
No. Why we use Kotlin? It comes from a colleague from mine. He comes up with the idea, hey, we could write our automation code in Kotlin, and here we have to know the history of us, because we started implementing our automation library in Java. And he comes up with the idea, come on, we can write it in Kotlin. And after some research, we found out, JetBrains offers this opportunity to write a multi-platform project to implement stuff in Kotlin, and we can use that in JavaScript and Java. Okay, let's give it a try. We want to know that. Yeah. So
awesome. So that's one of the benefits for sure. So you mentioned it works with Java and JavaScript, and I guess it's it's something that's happened on the back end. So someone doesn't know as a user of it, whether it's implementing Java or JavaScript is how it works, because you have functions and parameters that are exactly the same regardless of what language is being used on the back end.
We try to implement it as good as we can to really use the same parameters, but we have situations where it's not possible, okay, and the implementation is crucial, I would say. But okay, we should always think about the multi-platform project from JetBrains is in an alpha state, so not everything is perfect now, yeah, and for that we have to think about, can we implement this, or do we have to implement such kind of workaround? That's not always the same. Okay, it could not be perfect at the moment, but the most things we try to make it very, very comfortable for our devs to use that. And that's the important stuff for us.
Nice. And because it does work with Java and JavaScript, does that mean at some point in time, if you have people that contribute, you could have a Python implementation and a Ruby implementation, or is it just Java and JavaScript?
Actually, yes. I also read about Objective-C, but I'm not pretty sure if I really want to implement that. So I would say it's for us as a company, it's enough to bring up a version for JavaScript and Java, because the most projects from our company working with JavaScript and Java, we have less Python projects. But yeah, we could think about if we implement a Python stack, but that could not be implemented with Kotlin at the moment, and it's not planned at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah. So is this like a library, like any other library you would use in either Java or JavaScript? You just import it and then just start using it?
Yeah, correct. That's the one of the important points for us. You only have to add your jars or your dependency in JavaScript, and then you create your configuration file, which is a YAML for Java or a JSON for JavaScript. And if you're ready, you're up and running. So, and you don't have to do anything. You can write your automation code in that, and then you can call your REST APIs or GraphQL APIs. You can make your UI automation actual with Selenium, but we plan to switch to Playwright. You can interact with your database. You can interact with an Apache Kafka. So it's always on board. Yeah, you don't have to think about, how do I implement my Kafka consumer and producer for my testing anymore, because it's already there. You have to configure it.
So that's what's kind of unique about this solution. A lot of people are like, why another framework? Most frameworks just, I think, focus in on UI automation. But this sounds like it handles a bunch of other things. Let's start with the UI automation, though, first. You did mention it is using Selenium currently, but you plan on moving to Playwright. Will people have an option to use either or? Is there a reason why you think Playwright would be a better option for this particular implementation of your framework?
At the moment, there are two main reasons. The first reason is Playwright did a really good job in the last months with their releases. They are very fast. They bring a lot of interesting features up, and that works really pretty good, I would say, because that are the same devs from Puppeteer. And Puppeteer was really fast, and that's the same for Playwright, but it seems more completely, yeah. And the other reason is Playwright goes the next step. Like we try to be platform independent, so we wanna try to implement JavaScript and Java stuff, and Playwright implement also JavaScript, Java, and Python, and of course C# or .NET. But actually we only need the Java and JavaScript, so that is the right direction for us to be platform independent. And if we try to, or if we want to implement a Python version from 7Facette, then we also can use Playwright out of the box there. And that's awesome. And I solved the problem to run Playwright on AWS in a Lambda function. So it's pretty easy without changing any browser or jars on that. So we can use Playwright out of the box, and that's cool.
You actually have a really good blog post on actually implementing that. Running test in parallel, I think you said using Playwright with 7Facette against AWS.
Correct.
So let's dive into that, because once again, I'm kind of new to serverless, kind of new to Lambda. If other people, is first time them hearing Lambda Functions, like what is a Lambda function? I think we probably need to determine before we get into what you did there.
That's awesome, because I'm also really new to Lambda Functions at the moment.
Very good.
So as I started with Lambda Functions, I read the first 30 sides of this book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome. I have to read 30 sides of this book, and I have my first function up and running, and it works. Okay, cool. But I would describe Lambda function from my side like that. I would say you don't have to babysit your server anymore. So you can run everything in a function. You have to play by the rules from Lambda, okay? But at the end, you don't have to care about the server and infrastructure under the hood.
So is that what they mean by serverless? In the sense you're just running functions, and the function then handles all the infrastructure type thing because it's Docker, in a Docker container or something?
It seems. For me, it seems. At the moment, it seems. I'm not as deep in serverless at the moment, but I try to make one step by another. The first thing was I heard serverless. Okay, let's give it a try. Can we do it? Can we use that for testing and test automation? That was my first intention on that as I read this book. And yeah, I wanted to give it a try because it must be possible, I thought. So I wanted to see if we can do that.
So as I mentioned, you did write a blog about this. Did it allow you to run tests faster and in parallel more using this approach?
It's really fast. For example, we had an execution time from 50 minutes before, and now our execution time is 1.5 minutes.
Get out of here.
No. and the cool thing is, Joe, we didn't change the testing code for that.
Wow.
We only used the SAM template from AWS and copied our testing code in the template repository, and that's it. And after that, you can run your tests in parallel. You don't have to configure how many threads do you want, how many CPU, how many memory. You don't have to care about it. You can write your tests, and at the end you say, okay, let's trigger my test via easy REST call, and the Lambda scale out by itself, and you don't have to care about. And that makes my work and my execution time very, very comfortable and very, very fast, I would say, because I proved that I can run my end-to-end test with UI, with API and so on in 1.5 minutes instead of 15 minutes. And I think about bigger scenarios, about what happens if I have 300 test cases. I mean, I can run 300 test cases in parallel, and I got the result at the end after, I don't know, 1 minute, 2 minutes, but I have 300 results there, yeah? And I can scale out it until 1,000 functions out of the box. And I would say if we talk to AWS, it's possible to run more functions in parallel, like 60,000. I don't know, but that's an interesting scenario because I don't have to care about. And that's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't worked for a company in a few years now doing hands-on, but this is definitely the approach first thing I would try, because it sounds like it's really working. Is there any downside to it? Is there a cost? I assume there's some sort of cost associated with it, as the amount of functions that are consumed, or I don't know how that works. But.
No, the first downside was, how can I get run that? I tried a lot. I started, okay, how can I call a Lambda function? Okay, then I tried with the book, okay, you have an easy Lambda function, come on, it's working fine. Then I thought, okay, my test automation, how would I bring my test automation code, my test cases up to a Lambda function? And then, okay, it's not as easy. Lambda, AWS Lambda offers this opportunity to upload Docker container in the ECR and so on. And then I thought, okay, great, I won the game. I can create my Docker container, I can push it up in the ECR repository, okay. It seems pretty easy. And locally, it runs in, 5 minutes. And I thought, okay, cool, I'm done. And then there comes the downside. I uploaded everything and I thought, okay, come on, Lambda function, you have to execute my tests. And then nothing happened. I got one exception after the next with user XPS is not available and so on and so on. And I thought, oh my God, locally it runs perfect. What is going on here? And then I had to step into deeper in the Playwright container and have to think about, okay, the things are, what happened is that the browser is not in the right location for an AWS Lambda function because they are linked to user but it's not available for a Lambda function. So I had to create my own Docker container based on the Playwright container and have to copy a lot of stuff to a location where Lambda can find it. And after that, it was like magic.
Wow.
Safari WebKit is running out of the box. I thought, okay, Safari is working? Cool. What is with Chrome? The next step. Chrome is interesting because Chrome tries to save a lot of resources and make it as fast as possible. So they try to fork some processes in the background to be so fast. And then I thought, okay, Lambda can't be multi-threading. Okay, so we go step back. Can I configure Chrome like, hey, you have to run in one process? Okay, it's possible. There's a parameter. Next try. Okay, if I use only one process, then I have to deactivate Zygote, okay, and so on, so on. So I tried a lot in the background to get the things up and running with Chrome. But at the end, there were 3 parameters, and then everything worked in Chrome. And that was a really, really cool situation for us, because our projects are mostly running on Chrome browser, and we have everything there. The only browser which is not working at the moment is Firefox, because there I didn't find any parameter to deactivate this multi-processing problem. But okay, we can live with that. And I also. So it's fine for me.
Yeah, so the question is, does 7Facette have any functions now built into it that makes it easier to run on AWS using Lambda, so someone doesn't have to do this and learn this on their own? Because you already did it, you already learned it. And now it prompts them, okay, you need these 3 parameters or something.
That's very easy at the moment, because actually you can't do that because 7Facette doesn't implement Playwright at the moment. We implemented in the next version that we changed from Selenium over to Playwright. And that's an absolute fair consideration to think about. Should we implement that stuff so that is already up and running or available on AWS Lambda, or can we handle that like that? Why not? I mean, I'm completely open. I mean, with that we are very, very cool, I would say, because we can now implement an event-driven test automation architecture on that, and we can do a lot of more stuff. Yeah. So why shouldn't we do that? Why?
Absolutely. That sounds very, very cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some other technology people, they're aware of, REST testing and API testing. I think kind of new is GraphQL endpoints maybe. So it sounds like your solution, your UI then test can interact with the REST API and talk back and forth. Does it have that type of functionality?
Yep. We implemented the Ktor. I don't know if you really know that. Ktor is also from JetBrains, which brings a lot of functionality with it for interacting with REST and GraphQL out of the box. And in Ktor, you can choose which kind of HTTP client you really want to use. But in 7Facette, we use the standard Apache HTTP client under the hood from Ktor. And that's pretty cool because we can implement it as synchronous, asynchronous, and we don't have to care about that. And that's working pretty fine for us. And yeah. Now,
what are you using Kafka for? I think I saw Kafka mentioned multiple times. What are you doing? What are you doing over there? What are you testing?
So a lot of applications at our company transfer messages or something like that via Kafka, and we have to validate, or projects have to validate: is the message in the right format? Is the message on the right topic? How long is the time transfer from one topic to another topic, and so on and so on. And if you think about, we are a television company. We have a lot of stuff. We have to deliver content at the end out to the end user. And there's a long chain between every small system to get the things out. And yeah, one communication part is via Kafka. And so it's important for us to interact with that, and also to be able to test stuff with that. So producing, consuming messages, more messages. I don't know. Every team has other scenarios, but it's important for us to interact with that. So we implemented it, but I'm completely open if the community says, oh no, I want to interact with an SQS. Come on, feel free, implement it, contribute to that. I mean, why not?
Love it. So, a lot of times projects, this is open source, so people can contribute and add functionality like you mentioned. I'm just wondering if this is a stumbling block that you see. If someone's like, I've never used Kotlin, I don't even know, I've never heard of it, or maybe how hard is it then to get contributors that may be more familiar with Java or JavaScript?
If you can Java, you can Kotlin. So that's easy. So before I learned Kotlin, I implemented a lot of Java and JavaScript stuff. And for Kotlin, I need, I don't know, 1 month. And then the structure was clear, and it's pretty the same. But yeah, it's a small step to get up and running with Kotlin, I would say. It's easy.
Perfect. Now, we mentioned the technology piece of getting tests to run in parallel, but I assume that you had to actually design your tests the right way in order to get them to run correctly in parallel.
Of course.
Any tips on how to create tests, like thinking, all right, eventually it's going to have to run in parallel, so I better not do that because it's not going to really scale really well?
Yeah, of course. So the first and the important rule is your tests have to be independent. So if that's not possible, you have a problem. But that was one important rule for the design for our tests, that the tests have to run in parallel, and we make it like that way. Our test creates his own test data in the background, and worked only with this test data. So we can say every test is completely independent from another test, and we have no collision on that. Collision? I believe collision. Yeah, yep. Collision on that. And that is one of the important rules that I can say to everybody who wants to parallelize his tests. If you can't write your tests independently, you can't run it parallel, or it's very, very hard. And yeah, why should you do that?
Absolutely. And I think what a stubbling step is, which it sounds like you resolved, is test data. Like you said, sometimes test 5 needs to have like if it's a patient or something like in a certain state, or a document in a certain state before I could do a next step. So how do you handle that?
That was pretty easy. We used the Java Faker library on that in the background. And we configured that the Java Faker library brings up our data that we really wanted or that we really need. So, for example, we have a registration page. So it was pretty easy to say, okay, create different kind of first names, last names, and so on. So that was easy. And that brings up in the situation that we can say, okay, the test is completely independent, but there could be other scenarios where it's pretty hard, but it's always the same. You have to think about your test data that you want to use, and how can you use that in an easy way with have the control over your test data, and you can reuse that every time again and again. That's important, because if you can't do that and you have to create the test data before by hand, then I say, okay, you have a problem. You don't have to think about parallelization. You have to think about how can you handle your test data. And a lot of people, don't do that.
That's for sure. That's one of the biggest failures I've seen for animations, because of the test data, just like you mentioned. All right, Patrick. So it seems like it's fairly new. It has 25 stars. I think it should have more based on what I've heard. I actually have to try it. So I guess what's next? What's the next step? Because it sounds like you're constantly improving this and adding to it recently.
Yeah, of course. Next step is we make a great or a bigger refactoring on 7Facette. We want to improve stuff. We want to change to Playwright because it seems more in our strategy. We want to fix some failures. I mean, every software has failures. And you will hear next step from my side, what's next on AWS Lambda, and how can we get an event-driven architecture on that. Because if you think about AWS Lambda and Lambda Functions, and you run your test there, you see the test is running, but you don't know when the test is ready and what kind of status does the test have. So that's the next step. I already have a solution on that, but that will I post on my next blog post.
Okay, Patrick, before we go, is there one piece of actionable advice you can give to someone to help them with their automation testing efforts? And what's the best way to find or contact you or learn more about 7Facette?
Of course, you should learn about 7Facette. I'm a fan of learning programming. It's important to learn programming stuff. It's not enough to say, okay, I can implement Java stuff. You have to learn programming. You have to learn programming on Java. You have to learn programming on JavaScript to get the feedback, the feeling, okay, how can you solve the stuff? Yeah. If you have that, next step is go to Test Automation University. You learn a lot of stuff there. It's great. It's great content there, great teachers. It makes a lot of fun, and you should use that. There's a lot of information there, and that brings everybody up on testing and test automation. And the last thing I would say, what is really important is don't stand still. Move every time forward. Think about what could be the next interesting step. I mean, there are a lot of interesting topics like AWS Lambda or AI or I don't know. Yeah, so please don't stand still, and I would love it. We have a lot of open source projects, because open source is very, very cool. It gives back to the community what's going on, what's happening. And yeah, I would say that's really important for us.
Thanks again for your automation awesomeness. For links to everything of value we covered in this episode, head on over to testguild.com/A375. And while you're there, make sure to click on the Try for Free Today link under the exclusive sponsor section to learn all about Sauce Labs' awesome products and services. And if the show has helped you in any way, why not rate it and review it in iTunes? Reviews really help in the rankings of the show, and I read each and every one of them. So that's it for this episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. I'm Joe, and my mission is to help you succeed with creating end-to-end, full-stack automation awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Head on over to testguild.com for full show notes, amazing blog articles, and online testing conferences. Don't forget to subscribe to the Guild to continue your testing journey.